In this video, I will show you how you can transform this photo into this one in Photoshop. So I'm not gonna tell you what I'm doing in this video or tutorial, whatever. I'm just gonna give you some tips on how to create better photos, better artwork. So how do you turn photos into artwork? Well, it starts with finding the right photos first, because sometimes photos don't work that well. So I usually don't use the first photo I find. I try to find a couple photos, and from those I will pick the best one to use. So that being said, I try to avoid photos with a lot of sunlight in them. For instance, photos that are taken in daylight with bright sun on the face of the animal or people in the photo. So it's better to use photos with taken at sunset or even in the shadow evening, because it's easier to edit photos that are like dark and manipulate sunlight or lighting instead of removing it. So try to use photos with less sunlight, and best ones are during sunset, so when there's a little bit of light in the photo but not too much. And I also always don't go for the first design or first photo. For instance, you can see here I have like this dragonfly, and I'm gonna remove that later on because I felt like it doesn't look right on this photo. It was a little bit too small, so I went back to adding a glowing butterfly. And the reason why I recreate things on different photos is because when you practice a lot of things, for instance when you practice a sport or you learn a new language, the best way to get better is to do things over and over 100 times or 1,000 times. And that's why I have this design again with the glowing butterfly, because on every new design I just get better at it. So try to create the same concepts over and over with different photos. You will see when time passes by and you create a lot of stuff, you'll notice that you get better at it on every design. And sometimes photos don't work, so I have a lot of designs that I created and that I never shared because I felt like it doesn't look right, and I just go on with another one. And this is also always what I do: lighten up eyes and important spots on photos. So you can see here I use a Dutch tool to lighten up this eyes, so we can have like this sort of reflection in the eyes from this light source here. For instance, this dragonfly, let's lighten up. And I think it's also important to create your own style that you use or on editing while editing, so people recognize that style. For instance, we upload something on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and people notice directly this, oh, this design comes from this person. I just can see it right away because the way he creates it or she, you can recognize it. And try to work on lighting a lot, because when you understand lighting, shadows and stuff like that, it gets a lot easier than when you don't understand it. So I spend most time while editing on lighting, because it's also fun to do, and creating a lot of edits with the focus on lighting makes me better in creating lighting on new edits and new designs. And most of the time of creating goes into getting little stuff right, like little pieces of reflections of lighting. And instead of spending a lot of time on the composition itself, try to spend a lot of time on getting things right like they're supposed to be. So if you have like this light source here, try to spend a lot of time on creating the right reflections in this edit, and don't overdo it. Try to be minimal in what you edit. So maybe this is a little bit of not the right example for this, because this is like heavy edited, especially when you use like the burn tool here. I like to use the burn tool, but I don't want to do it too much, because when you do it too much it just ruins the whole image. So try to do it little by little pieces, and when it looks a little bit weird, try to drop the saturation of it so it still looks real, but it still has that touch of art in it. So play around with the settings of the burn tool. Start off with the highlights, with a bigger exposure. Once you got that right, just go to the midtones and shadows, and also drop the exposure of it. When you do shadows, you can drop the exposure even around 0 to 10%. It's just a little bit of details to create some shadows, but to still have that touch of a real photo instead of overly heavily editing it. So here's how I remove the dragonfly and change it to this butterfly, because it gives a little bit more to this image. And try to make it bigger, smaller, until you get it right, because I couldn't get it right. It still felt like it looked weird here because it was too big or something and too light. So blending this together with dropping the saturation. After that, I'm doing some curves to it to get it all darker, and at the final phase I'm just adding some glow to it. Also keep in mind that not all photos work. For instance, this butterfly, it doesn't always work. I tried a lot of butterflies before I edited this one, and sometimes you try just different butterflies and a lot of them just look weird and doesn't fit the image. This photo also had a little bit of noise, the original photo from this leopard, and the best way to fix this is to also add a little bit of noise to the butterfly so it blends in better together. And try to spend a lot of time, like I said, on lighting of things, because lighting shadows, that's one of the most important things on your composition. If those look right, the whole composition will look right. It may look like this design was created in, what is this video, like 15 minutes, but it took a lot more time to find the right photos and try out different photos, how they look. So that's the stuff I don't show in the video, but it takes a lot more time to find photos that are good for compositions. So I have one video where I show the whole process of creating a composition, and that video is like 90 minutes long. So that's to give you an idea how long that takes. Now, as you can see here, I try to fix this lighting on this butterfly to make sure it fits this image. So what I'm doing here is adding a lot of curves to it and brushing them away at the center of this butterfly where I want my glow. And the best way to look at how things blend together is to watch the black tones of this butterfly, of this wings of it, and try to make it fit the black area of this background image. For instance, here we have this leopard, and you can try to get like the same color black instead of one a little bit gray and one black. And after that, I just add some glow to it with a brush, just brushing a little dot and changing the blending mode here. And as you can see, I'm still not happy with how this butterfly is in its composition, because I don't want to have this butterfly going over its face, because then it's ruined. So usually I don't even know what I'm doing. Sometimes I just try out different stuff and see how that looks in the composition, instead of being happy with what I created. Try to do different compositions and try to move stuff around and see how that looks, because it all comes down to your imagination, and you can try out different stuff. It's not a photo, it is a composition, so you are free in what you do here. And the best way to see what looks best is to see how it looks in different ways. And that's also what I do when I have when I don't have a background. But when I have backgrounds, I almost never take the first background that I try. When I change backgrounds, I usually do that on the last bit of the design, because that's really easy to change and it it just sets the whole mood of the composition. And usually the first background doesn't even look right what I try, so sometimes I try like 10 or 20 different backgrounds in a composition, and sometimes they work really well, sometimes you have to edit it a lot. So best way to get the best composition is to try out different stuff, a lot of different stuff. And even little dots like these sparkles or whatever you want to call them, even those matter in a composition. So little stuff like that, if you move it around, you can change the whole look of this creation, this design. So try to move them to different positions and see how that looks. And here again, I just want to light up these eyes a little bit more to have this image, this design like sort of cartoon or something, or some sort of weird creation. And the best way to get better at something is to just do it every day, especially if you enjoy creating and you do it every day, you will get better. For instance, if you look at your creations from a year ago and you have been creating like almost every day. I create almost every day in Photoshop. It's just fun to do, and it's just like a hobby. And when it's also your work, for instance, I work as a freelance designer, so I'm just creating every day in Photoshop. Sometimes I don't get really interesting projects to create for clients, and sometimes it's interesting when you have like things you can do for with your own imagination instead of doing exactly what some client wants. So try to create every day and compare your work to how it was last year, and you will see a huge difference on how you improved and how that looked before. And if you go on with creating every day, you will get better. Everyone gets better at something that they do every day, doesn't matter what it is. And you don't need to have talent or something, you can just create a lot, because hard work beats talent, and if you work hard you will get better at creating. Now, as you can see, I'm still struggling with this butterfly here. I'm adding some noise to it to try to blend this better together. So it's just a little piece on this design, and it takes the most time of it while creating it. And yet again, I try to resize this to see how it looks, even try to move it on its face, but that looked weird, so I just go back again where it was. So never go with the first edit, and almost always add some presets to them to change the whole look and feel of this image. The presets also helps with blending images better together. You can get all these presets if you check the link in the description. The only thing you need to do is to get them, open them up in Lightroom, and once you created the design, you can try out a couple of these presets and see how they look. And the only thing I edit with these presets is the lighting just a little bit, and that's it. And after that, I just export them as files again and open them up in Photoshop, and only thing I have to do is play with the opacity and editing the colors a little bit. So it really helps with blending images together and getting your final design right. Sometimes my design doesn't look right, and I just add these presets and instantly it changes the whole image, and it looked a lot better and blends better together. And again, I just like to play with a little bit more light reflections on the end of the design. So here you can see I just add some more reflections to this leopard to see how that looks, to finally get the final design here. So never go with the one that you have, and try to do different stuff here. So anyways, I hope you enjoy my video, and don't forget to subscribe if you do, and see you in the next video.